When you look at the medical system, it's not designed for performance. It's designed to prevent disease and manage disease for a certain population who are already at that point.
Cognitive function is one of those things that I think of. What are some of the ways that then high performers can structure, I suppose, their approach to be as mentally sharp as possible?
The two most important things to optimizing cognitive function, number one would be identifying any in the body, specifically around the gut microbiome. So if we think there's damage to your intestine, you can't really expect good cognitive function because, well, let's break it down.
Things change significantly for us when we reach the age of around about 33 to 35. What are some of the challenges that start to arise from that period?
Declining testosterone levels is the main one, which is going to be like mid to late 30s. When it comes to testosterone, though, the biggest driver of low testosterone is going to be bloods is a snapshot in time of your last 120 days of what you've done. Think the blood test is like popping the hood of the car and you see smoke. I can see that there's a little few things going wrong. The car's not blown up yet, but I can see, there's deficiencies, there's inflammation, your immune system's a bit trigger happy, like what's going on? But the next question is,
so many Australians drink alcohol every single day. How does that fit in, if at all, to a plan as someone will come to see you, for example?
I mean, it doesn't. It's killing you slowly. It's a poison.
Supplement that I also want to touch on, that it's not necessarily new, but it's just getting a lot more airtime at the moment, creatine.
Yeah, I think
caffeine.
Caffeine, a lot of
Most high performers are optimizing for the wrong thing. They fix the calendar, their team, their offer. Meanwhile, their blood work is telling a completely different story, one they've never actually been shown how to read. Dr. Daniel Kirkbride is an osteopath and a functional medicine practitioner who spent years watching driven people plateau, not because of their strategy, but because of their actual biology. Low energy, they've normalized. Cognition that was just slightly off. Recovery that never quite landed. All of it sitting inside test results a GP would call fine. Daniel doesn't use conventional ranges. He interprets data against optimal performance standards. What your blood work, genetics, and microbiome should look like if you're running at the level you're actually capable of. Then he builds a system around it. His belief is that health isn't complicated. The industry just profits from making it feel that way. And that peak performance has never been a willpower problem, it's a data problem. Most people are missing the information their own body has been trying to send them. In this episode of the Freedom Formula podcast, we're going to get into why your doctor's normal is nowhere near optimal, what advanced diagnostics actually reveal that standard testing misses, and why Daniel thinks aligning your biology with your ambition is the last unlock most high performers haven't touched. This is the Freedom Formula podcast. Let's dive in. How is it that you would describe what it is that you do?
I help high performers identify their hidden blocks in their physiology, and then I build plans to help them access that extra 20-30%.
So what is it that the average person doesn't understand then about their health that is actually causing them the most harm?
I think it's not necessarily one thing specifically. I'd say it's more around the philosophy of like understanding how testing diagnostics work. So we go into this deeper of like the whole thing I talk about a lot is the conventional system in terms of looking at bloods, looking at testing through the lens of sickness versus looking at the lens through health and performance, which is two very different things, especially when it comes to people like you and me. When we're high performers, like you don't just want to be average and performing at normal levels, we want to be performing at high levels consistently. So that's a completely different ballpark and a completely different conversation. So I think a big thing for like my demographic, which is CEOs, business owners, athletes, where you want to be performing at a high level, they're looking at the lens of sickness, expecting performance outcomes, and they're leaving a massive gap in what they're capable of because they don't actually realize that. So I think it's one of those things where they don't actually know, which is the biggest problem, because obviously if you're aware of it, you can fix it. If you don't know what you don't know, then the biggest limitation that I find with most of those guys is they think they're performing at a 10 and they're performing at a 6 and they actually don't even know they're leaving 30-40% on the table.
What are some of the lead indicators then that people come to you with that are the reason why they feel like they're not at their best?
I'd say the most common three would be low energy, fatigue, brain fog, or like I guess to expand on brain fog, a very specific common one I get, because I work with a lot of speakers, is like forgetting my words on stage, or like I'm on a Zoom meeting and I forget what I'm talking about mid-sentence, or I walk into a room and I forget what I'm there. That's a big one, like cognitive function. And then the last one would be recovery. Like it's taking me longer to recover. So again, I work with a lot of guys who run events, like they run a 2-day event, it might take them 3 days to recover, or they're feeling completely gassed after it. So I'm not recovering as fast as I used to. I'm not performing as sharp as I used to. And they're experiencing things like brain fog, bloating, and fatigue, essentially. They're the 3 main ones.
Mm. So you help mostly people that are actually aspirational business owners who are trying not to look at their health from a perspective of illness, but rather performance and optimizing.
Yeah, 100%, which is, I think when you look at the medical system, it's not designed for performance. It's designed to prevent disease and manage disease for a certain population who are already at that point. So it's not that the medical system's bad. It's just like the medical system is designed to help someone who's in situation A. And for a lot of people like you or me, we're not really in situation A right now. We're in situation B, which is I'm performing at a good level. There's no like red flags. I don't have disease. I'm not going to drop dead tomorrow in most cases. But, I also might have another 20, 30, 40% in the tank that I'm not even aware of and don't have access to. I think a big thing with that though is like people normalize these symptoms. So, for a lot of people, we just think, low energy, brain fog, having the afternoon crash is completely normal. Like I'm just a hustler. I'm a busy business owner. It's normal to feel tired at 2 p.m. and need more coffee. And you normalize it because it's so common. I think that's a big distinction I talk about a lot is like what is normal versus, what is common. Just because something is common doesn't mean it's normal. But because if you have 100 people around you, if 95 people are experiencing that, which is, most people, because most people are, fun fact, 61% of Australians have at least one chronic disease they're not aware of. And that's people who actually have the disease. So there's a lot of other people before that point, like the pre-disease state, where they're experiencing these things I mentioned, where they just think, these things are normal because everyone's having it. So they don't actually look into it. And it's not until you have the conversation with them and say, hey, these things aren't normal. They're actually early warning signs or your body whispering to you that something's wrong. Pay attention, that they then, obviously start to do something about it. So yeah, I think in a nutshell, it's looking at health through the wrong lens, looking at it through sick care, not healthcare, and then not knowing, that those symptoms are actually, warning signs and just blowing them off as normal. They're the 2 biggest limiting factors because then it stops you from doing something about it.
Yeah, doctors are always looking at it from the perspective of what is the norm, but against what population?
Yeah, well, I love stats. I love data. So this was back in 2022. 61% of Australians have at least one chronic disease. So that would be things like diabetes, like type 2 diabetes. So lifestyle diseases, things that caused by lifestyle, reversed by lifestyle. Type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease, which you obviously do a lot of work on through your company. Even things like mental stuff. So anxiety, depression, ADHD, all those kind of things get bundled into the same category. That was in 2022. So that's a long time ago. So it's probably even worse by now. But that means of the average person, if we got 100 people in a room right now and took all their bloods, that means 60 to 70 of those people are living with at least one disease. Now you come along and you're like, Dan, I'm a boss. I run a really big business. I travel around Australia. I'm pretty jacked. But I just want to know what my health's like. And it comes back and everything's completely normal. Be like, that's a bit weird. I'm not recovering like I used to. I'm traveling a lot now. I feel a bit fatigued, a bit lethargic. Like there must be something. Tell me. Now I'm looking at it through the lens, comparing you against the average person, which I just mentioned is sick and has disease, which is why I'm saying you're normal. You're normal compared to that population. But why are we comparing you against that population? Doesn't make any sense. Of course, you're going to be normal. You're probably going to look a lot better than those people. But because we're looking at it through that lens, it means we're not able to see the hidden gaps that would, in functional medicine, what I do would be looking at that and going, okay, hey, Shane, you're not in the red zone. I kind of think of it as a traffic light system. The red zone is disease. The green zone is optimal performance. And then the yellow zone is kind of like 50 shades of purgatory. A lot of people get stuck in purgatory. This is where I was back in 2020 when I was sick. It was like, you're not sick enough to be diagnosed. So we don't really know what to do with you. And you're normal, you're fine. Sorry, can't help you. Or, you're in the red zone. Like we didn't see this coming. Where'd this come from? The only way out is medication and you're stuck with this the rest of your life. It's bad luck, bad genetics. See you later. So I guess functional medicine and what I do is looking at those 50 shades of yellow and orange and going, well, can we actually pick up on these things 6, 12, 18 months, even sometimes years before things start, like symptoms start? Because in blood work, you can see a lot of these things 18 months before the symptoms appear. And there are a lot of diseases, you can see the signs and symptoms, 5, 10 years before the disease actually prevents, like dementia, cardiovascular disease. You can pick up on these things years before if you're looking for the right markers and you're looking at it through the right lens. So bit of a tangent, but yeah, I guess that's where the data gets skewed, is like you're looking through the wrong lens, you're comparing yourself against sick people, not optimal. And because you're doing the wrong assessment, it's like in business. If you're a 7-figure business assessing yourself against a startup, obviously you're going to look pretty good. Compare yourself against other 7-figure businesses and you're going to realize, holy shit, there's a lot of gaps. Is your business going to burn down tomorrow? No, but potentially you're going to find a 30 to 40% extra and leakage that you weren't even aware of. Now that you have that awareness, cool. Let's tweak what we're doing. Let's update our processes. And in 12 months' time, we'll be a lot better.
Yeah. You've got a clinical background in osteopathy, strength and conditioning.
Yep.
Functional medicine.
Yep.
That's obviously an unusual combination, very uncommon.
Yeah.
How did those three, I guess, align and form part of what you chased?
Well, I think I don't think it's that abnormal. I think it's rare. But when I zoom out, like I think the whole problem, or one of the problems I see with the medical system, is it's very disjointed, very segmented. Not many people communicate very effectively. So you might have experienced this if you go see, and this is with respect, nothing against any of the individual practitioners, but for a lot of people, if you go see like a naturopath or a nutritionist, how many of them have a background in strength and conditioning and no powerlifting, bodybuilding? Not many. So they could be an amazing dietitian, but they have no idea about practical, like you could read a textbook, but practical implementation of strength and conditioning. Similarly, you have a really great PT, really strong, great with rehab, but has no idea about, nutrition beyond calories and macros. It's just hit your macros. No idea about the actual intrinsics of nutrition. You might go to a doctor, they're really good at the testing, but they have no idea about the other things. So you have this like really segmented, isolated approach where you've got isolated silos with practitioners. And then the way we look at the body is also very isolated. You have a thyroid issue, you have a gut issue, you have a brain issue, and nothing's really connected or integrated. So my view is I want to be a specialist generalist, which is the opposite of what everyone says, master of none.
Or jack of all, master of none. Yeah.
I disagree. I think for me, I would consider myself to be, a solid 8 out of 10 in all 3 areas, but because I have all 3 areas, it means I can help someone on a deeper level because we're giving them that integrated approach. So that's always been what I desired, because I guess the way we got there, long story short, when I was young, I was overweight and got bullied a lot. That led me into wanting to be, fit and healthy. So I wasn't getting bullied. Fell in love with fitness. Unfortunately, I had a lot of injuries. That led me into wanting to be a personal trainer and an osteopath. And then in osteopathy, when I was building my business back in 2020, I got burnt out pretty bad, went through the whole medical system, did all the blood tests, you're normal, nothing's wrong. We can't find anything wrong with you. Got prescribed antidepressants, the whole shabam of no one really helping me. So I was kind of like, all right, well, doctors aren't helping me. What's the next step? Okay, let's see naturopaths, let's see nutritionists. Ran into the problem I explained before. I'm like, all right, I played high level sport my whole life. I've done powerlifting, bodybuilding. Like this isn't really working for someone like me who is into performance. So I went in circles for probably 18 months until I found someone who was a really good functional medicine practitioner who helped me. And that was where I really fell in love with functional medicine. So I guess that was like the really accelerated 15-year journey of, it was originally fitness and strength and conditioning. Then it was osteopathy and more rehab. And then it was more the functional medicine side of things. And to me though, it just makes sense because you can't look at the body in isolation. No system works alone, heals alone, or gets injured alone. So really, I think the ultimate practitioner is less about a label and more about a practitioner who has those 3 areas of knowledge, because without those 3 areas of knowledge, you're always going to have one area that's lacking. And in most scenarios, when someone comes to you with pain, injury, dysfunction, or wanting to optimize their performance, you need to be pretty good at looking at all those areas.
Across the board. It's kind of like in business, right? You think about the areas of business being sales, marketing, fulfillment. It's kind of like that.
Yeah.
Ideally, if you're going to be a good CEO, you want to have a bit of an understanding of all of those things to be able to then create a successful corporation, which would be the same with the body, I would imagine.
Yeah, 100%. Like you don't have to be an expert in both of them. Like I'm not going to be if you compared me to a cardiologist, I'm not going to be an expert compared to the cardiologist in the specifics of the heart, but like I should have an 8 out of 10 understanding of how that system works and how it integrates into the body. Same as you can probably hire an expert marketer who spent 20 years doing it. They're going to be way better than you, but you need to be across it and understand it.
Understand the basics.
But more when it comes to the practicality side of things, like I think a big point of difference and why a lot of reasons, like people who come to me, like when I ask them, why have you come to me? They want that integrated approach because like what I did when I went through the system, it was, all right, you've got a thyroid issue. Let's look at the thyroid. Let's medicate the thyroid. And 9 times out of 10, same as your business, if you just look at your P&L statement and you see there's a loss, like, cool. Why? If I don't have the full statement and you don't know every single aspect of your business, how do you understand what's driving that? You don't. It's the same as health. It's like, all right, if we just look at the thyroid and we test the thyroid antibodies and we see you've got autoimmune thyroid, it's like, well, the issue's in the thyroid, but we actually want to know what's driving that. So we have to zoom out and look at, well, how is that integrated to the gut and the nervous system and the adrenals and your nutrition and your training and your supplementation? If you don't understand all that other stuff and you're an expert in the immune system, well, you're an expert in now keeping that person alive and making sure the immune problem doesn't get any worse, but you're not an expert at actually fixing the thing that causes that in the first place. So I think, again, medicine is designed to treat and manage disease, but it's not great at problem solving and figuring out what caused that disease in the last 18 months, 36 months, which is where I've really spent my last 5 years diving deep into, is like really being super curious and a bit obsessed with like, all right, well, what are the mechanisms that are driving these problems 3 to 5 years before someone gets to that stage.
So proactive rather than reactive.
Yeah, essentially. It's not about reversing disease. It's more just about, okay, well, if we understand that the body, the body is a system, the body is a process, the same as business. I was having this chat with a client before. It's like, look at business as a system. We have, 12 months, we break it down to quarters, we look at our P&L, we have data, we do testing, we update, we iterate, and we optimize. It's the same thing with the body. A lot of people are just guessing and don't really have the right data or testing because they don't know what we explained before. They're looking at their bloods and going, everything's normal, it's fine, and they move on. If you have the right testing and look at it through the right lens, and you're consistently doing this on a monthly, quarterly basis and have the right data points in front of you, the answers are always there and it's super obvious. It's not easy, but it's not simple, but it's easy. So we just have the right set of information in front of you.
So you're talking a lot about, obviously, the interpretation of blood work against optimal ranges, and not just like conventional ones and measuring against the wrong segment of the population, those that are already sick, for example.
Yeah.
So what's the difference in practice? Like, what are you testing for then for someone that comes to you who isn't necessarily sick? And what are we looking for?
First part of the question is around ranges. So like, I'm going to give you a practical example. When it comes to, let's say we do a full metabolic panel, which would be testing like red blood cells, white blood cells, immune function, thyroid function, kidney function, like a full holistic overview. If we look at the white blood cells, the reference range when you go see a doctor is normal ranges would be anywhere from 4 to 11. Optimal ranges would be anywhere from 5.5 to 7.5. So that example there shows you, it's like you could be potentially in a lot of those yellow orange zones for years, because these changes take time as well. If you test someone's blood 6 months apart, they could have gone from 7.5 to 8. So it's a very slow process, but you can see that person could have been 8, 8.5, 9, 9.5, 10. And during that whole process, every time they go to the doctor, it's normal. But it's like, well, I'm not feeling normal. I keep getting sick and I have these issues. So the optimal ranges is looking at it through the lens of optimal, not sick care, which means we pick up on something when it's in the yellow, not the orange or red. So that's the first part of the question, is like the actual like markers we test are the exact same. It's just looking at it through different ranges and different lenses so that we can pick up on things super early and go, oh, hey mate, you're at 7.5. Let's just figure out what's going on, investigate what's causing your immune system to be a little bit trigger happy. There's no issue right now. You don't have disease. You don't have a problem. But if we let this go for another 18 months, like you are going to have a problem, versus medical system would say, all sweet, let's wait till it's at, 12. And then we'll go, oh shit, there's a problem. Oh shit, you've got autoimmunity. Oh shit, we didn't see it coming. Here's some medication. What was the second part of the question?
More so, what are you looking for? So someone comes to you and they're not necessarily sick.
Oh yeah, cool. Yeah. So, I just think of it the same way again as a business. You want to have it's not about looking for anything in particular. It's about just having almost like a SWOT analysis. You just want a big 360
general overview first. Yeah.
So the testing I'll use most frequently, I think has the most value, is bloods. And I'll tell you why each one's useful. Bloods is a snapshot in time of your last 120 days of what you've done. Your habits, routines, behaviors, everything you've done over the last 120 days is going to be your blood work.
Yeah.
The reason being, red blood cells have a lifespan of 120 days and then they turn over. So if you want to see meaningful changes, it's not really useful to do it any more frequently than 120 days, unless you're looking at things like cholesterol, glucose, where they can change pretty fast. But 120 days is like snapshot in time. Think the blood test is like popping the hood of the car and you see smoke. I can see that there's a few things going wrong. The car's not blown up yet, but I can see, there's deficiencies, there's inflammation, your immune system's a bit trigger happy, like what's going on? But the next question is, all right, well, what's causing that? What's driving that? So then we have to do a deeper investigation. And I think this is where something called a microbiome stool test or a poo test is super valuable, because your gut affects every single system in your body. And the way I view the body is you've got a hierarchy: nervous system, immune system, gastrointestinal system. Those three systems are basically one system. We can't isolate them. So doing the stool test will tell you how well those other systems are functioning and how your gut is affecting every single system in your body. So now we connect the dots and go, oh, okay, well, I can see that you've got elevated immune cells and elevated liver enzymes and low thyroid. And if we look at all those things through the medical system, it would be anti-inflammatory for this, vitamin C for this, thyroid for this. When we get the stool test, we can go, okay, interesting. You've got low secretory IgA, which is an immune defense mechanism. You've got high zonulin, which means you've got damage to your gut. You've got, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, which is infections. No wonder your bloods look like this. If we don't deal with that, then your bloods are still going to look shit. So then that gives us the root cause, the metaphorical root cause. There's never one, there's always multiple, but that gives us the root cause. So now we have a big picture of like what's driving the symptoms you're currently experiencing today. So usually the stool is like, this is what's been brewing over the last 18 to 36 months, which is now causing what we're seeing in the blood test today. So phase one, this is how I look at my program as well, is like first 16 weeks, put the fires out. If your house is on fire, put the fire out. Don't care about why the fire is there. I don't ask questions. If your house is on fire, you don't go, oh, what's caused it? Fucking put it out.
Put it out.
Yeah. So phase one, put the fires out. Blood work.
Unless you live in Sweden, I think, and then you get your phones out and you start recording the bar on fire. Did you hear about that?
Nah.
No, that actually happened anyway.
Wild. So then phase two is a stool test. And this is, all right, well, now that the fire's out, like what caused it? Was it, someone left the stove on? Was it a loose spark? Blah, blah, blah. So the stool test then allows us to go, okay, well, now that we've dealt with the fire, let's figure out what happens and make sure it never happens again. So now we're diving deeper into the gut infections, and they're usually the massive drivers or hidden drivers that people don't actually realize they have. I guarantee if I've looked at 300 stool tests over the last year, I'm yet to see one person who doesn't have the three things I mentioned. So I guarantee, and they're all high performers. They're not sick people.
So it's super common.
Yeah, almost everyone. I would confidently say like 99% of people have at least one of those three things, if not all of those three things. Damage to their gut, otherwise known as leaky gut. Low levels of secretory IgA, which is your immune defense mechanism. And then the third one being some sort of dysbiosis, which is imbalance of good bacteria, bad bacteria, or overgrowth of bacteria. So things like parasites, SIBO, SIFO, etc. Almost every single person. So that's probably a conversation for another time of what causes that. But in terms of your question about testing, so cool, we've gone bloods, snapshot of what's happening right now, stool, what caused that. And then the third piece of the puzzle, which I think is now where we switch the lens in my head from like fixing problems to optimizing performance, is the genetic DNA test. This has a lot of merit. People just use it at the wrong time and don't know what they're doing, and they just do stupid stuff. So when I say stupid stuff, it's like, if your house is on fire, why are you worrying about what furniture you're picking? Like, it doesn't make any sense. Like, put the fire out, figure out what caused the fire. In terms of, if we broke down that phase two, it's what caused the fire. Let's get rid of it. So elimination, let's get rid of the guys who caused it. Second thing is we need to rebuild the house, because your house currently looks like shit. So rebuild, repair, heal the gut, heal the immune system. Then make the house look pretty, paint it. Okay, this is like rebuilding your beneficial bacteria, making sure the microbiome is balanced. Now, and only now, we can look at the DNA test, which is, okay, if I look at you, I basically am thinking of you as a computer, which sounds really weird, but stay with me. So it's like, with a computer, you have a computer, and then you have the coding that runs the computer, or Claude. Yeah. Think of Claude. It's like, it's coding, that makes that run. So the genetic DNA test is basically looking at what is the coding that makes Shane run. And if I look at the coding, I can look into it and go, okay, there's a few short circuits here. I can see, based off this coding, this is the problems we're probably likely to have, and these are the things that he's probably going to be really good at. If I tweak this, we can make that work more effectively. It's basically what the genetic DNA test does. So it's also referred to as a methylation test. But a methylation test, just for people listening, because it's common, think methylation is one of many processes in the body. If you just do a genetic methylation test, you're missing like 80% of the genetic DNA test. So you want a genetic DNA test that covers everything. Once I have that coding, it's like, cool. Well, Shane, based off your genetics and your mutations, which mutations are basically like little short circuits to, your genes essentially. So I think we all have the same genes, but you might have a certain gene that's got a bit of a problem, and that means you're more likely to get certain outcome, like cardiovascular disease, or you're more likely to have dementia, you're more likely to have a heart attack, you're more likely to have diabetes, etc. So if I have all that information, it's pretty cool, right? Because now I can go, hey, Shane, we've just fixed all your shit, no pun intended. Now you want to live to 100 and you want to be dialed in. I know exactly what your risk factors are for disease. So I can tell you exactly what you shouldn't be doing. Newsflash, most of the stuff I tell you not to be doing, you probably already know, but now you've got some meaning behind it. You're more likely not to drink alcohol because you know that you're more likely to get dementia versus before I'm just telling you not to drink alcohol and you're like, I should be right. And then the second good thing about that is where we can figure out what your strengths are. So it's kind of like business. We focus on your strengths and then we outsource our weaknesses, or in this case, we just make sure we don't do things that will drive your weaknesses. So zooming out on that, it's like we have all those tests, cool, blood, stool, DNA, that covers our health. And then a big thing I'm a fan of, which gets missed in a lot of longevity programs, is looking at body composition and VO2 max, because they're three of the biggest markers that have, well, I guess three of the biggest markers. So VO2 max, number one, but a DEXA scan is going to show us visceral fat, body fat percentage, and lean muscle mass and bone mineral density. So having those metrics is like super valuable in terms of zooming out from the medical lens and then zooming into more the performance lens, which again, I said to you earlier, it's very segmented. Like you can't have a longevity program without lifting heavy shit and building your VO2 max. You can't be healthy if you don't have high levels of skeletal muscle, low levels of body fat, and a high VO2 max. It's like, what's the point? So I think integrating that and going, cool, we had the clinical tests, which look internally and optimize your biology. And then we look at the external tests, which are VO2 max and DEXA.
Performance.
So then we can, it's performance, but it's also health.
Yeah.
Which is, where the bro side of you and me probably comes out. It's like, cool, let's go lift some heavy stuff. Let's reduce our body fat, let's improve our VO2 max. Put all those things together, you've got a really clear understanding of where people are at. So I do all those tests with people when they start. It's pretty intensive, takes about a month, but we get like super crystal clear on, cool, here's where you're at, bloods, here's what's driving it, stool, here's what things we need to be aware of for disease risk factors, and here are the things we want to focus on for optimizing performance, DNA. Your VO2 max is shit. We need to focus more on cardiovascular health. Your DEXA scan, too much body fat, not enough skeletal muscle. We need to focus on strength. Or, some clients I might have, their VO2 max is amazing, but they don't have much skeletal muscle, like runners or high rocks. Yeah. And it's like, hey, let's just tone down on the, cardiovascular stuff and let's lift some weights, or vice versa. Bodybuilders, you got heaps of muscle and you're thick skin lean, but your VO2 max is 30 and you're probably going to drop dead tomorrow. Like, let's do some conditioning. So it helps you make better decisions. Same as business. I have the data. I make an informed decision. I do it for 90 days. I review, I iterate, and we go again. So this makes things super simple, because I think a lot of people in health are confused because there's so much information online. They're like, oh, what should I be doing? What protocol? What training? What meal plan? I don't know until I see your data. This is my response every time someone comes up to me now and they're like, can you help me with insert condition or insert thing? I'm like, I don't know. Show me your data. I can, but I don't know. It depends. So having the data just means you remove all the bullshit. You don't have your bullshit lens on anymore. You're just like, cool, based on me, my genetic profile, and where I'm at right now, what are my strengths, what are my weaknesses, what are my opportunities, and what am I going to focus on? Build out your 90-day block. At the end of 90 days, review, iterate, go again. Do that 12 months, and then do that for the rest of your life, and you'll be pretty healthy.
You make it all sound so simple in that way, right? With men, let's focus on that for a minute. Things change significantly for us when we reach the age of around about 33 to 35. There starts to be some changes in our hormone profile. What are some of the challenges that start to rise from that period?
It's mainly going to be obviously declining testosterone levels is the main one, which is going to be like mid to late 30s, especially like I'd say more obvious and prevalent over 40 for a lot of guys. Outside of that, to be honest, I think most of it's going to be lifestyle driven. I'd say most of those guys, when you start to get in your 30s, stress has increased, business, family, your training goes down, therefore your body fat percentage is going up, your muscle mass is going down, your metabolic health gets worse. So I think it's a combination of those lifestyle factors rather than more the physiology. I think guys got it pretty easy compared to girls.
Does the stress though, and the lack of sleep and that sleep deprivation, the chronic stress, and then obviously some of the factors that come in as you getting into your 40s start to compound and reduce your testosterone even more? Yeah,
it just becomes less. Easiest way to explain it is it's less forgiving. Like think about when you were 21. And I don't know about you when you were 21, but when I was 21, I used to party a fair bit when I was in uni. And I look back on it now and I'm like, how did I used to, go out partying, get like 2 hours sleep, jump into a 12-hour day of uni, go to the gym still and deadlift and do it all again. It's like your body's just so much more resilient at 21 versus, 35. Like it's less forgiving in terms of you can't get away with what you used to get away with, which we all know from, used to drink when you were 25, now you drink when you're 35.
It all
Big
changes.
Difference, yeah. So I think you just have less resilience in that department and things become less forgiving. So when you have the accumulation of all these 1%ers, you're going to feel it significantly more. When it comes to testosterone though, the biggest driver of low testosterone is going to be stress, which we know, but then people let's go right now live. When I say stress, what do you think of? What's stress?
Stressor, well, from my perspective, there's two things. There's the emotional stress from situations that are not optimal, whether it be family, we talked about business. Another stress could be exercise. That's a stressor, but there's a positive effect from that stress as well.
Yeah. So bang on, but you're obviously pretty smart. For a lot of people though, if you ask them that question, the main thing they just say is the emotional side.
The emotional, negative.
So I always think there's three main categories, 8 subcategories of stress. So 3 main categories would be physical, emotional, and environmental. So stress is not just the emotional, which is what people think of. Physical, you knock the nail on the head. This could be overtraining, under-recovering, chronic calorie deficits. Physical stress could be damage to your barriers in the body. So barriers in the body, gut barrier is one of the big ones. That's where your immune system lives. So if you have damage to your gut barrier, i.e. leaky gut, that's causing a lot of internal stress in the body, inflammation. Excessive ice baths, excessive sauna. Those can also cause a lot of stress. That's thermal stress. Environmental stress. These are the ones the 1%ers that people usually don't consider. Could be, for dudes, especially exposure to things like plastics, that's going to affect your body in terms of xenoestrogens. Could be, poor food quality where you're consuming a lot of, processed foods. So all these little tiny 1%ers, when it comes to stress in the body, have you heard of allostatic load?
No.
I think allostatic load is your total stress load in the body, essentially, how much you can take. So allostasis is basically another word. Actually, let me rewind. So think homeostasis, body's always trying to stay in balance, or homeostasis. Allostasis is the process of change, which would be adaptation. Allostatic load is the cost of adaptation. So adaptation is never free. So if I grow muscle, we both know that's going to cost a lot of energy. So allostatic load is basically the cost of adaptation. You can only handle so much allostatic load before you start to then tip over your metaphorical bucket. So if you had this imaginary bucket and that bucket is 70% full of all the things I mentioned before, I like to break it into productive stresses and unproductive stresses. Productive is training, could be ice bath, sauna in the right doses. They're productive. You do something, it's stressful in the body, it does take energy, but then the cost of that is we get stronger, we get fitter, etc. Unproductive stresses are the things I mentioned before, eating poor food, bad sleep, exposure to plastics and toxins and chemicals, drugs, alcohol, those kind of things. They're stresses, but they're not really productive. At the end of the day, though, whether it's productive or unproductive, it all goes into the same bucket. Doesn't matter what category it's from. Your brain doesn't go, oh, this is emotional stress and this is physical stress. It just knows how much stress you have. If that bucket is 80% full of unproductive stresses, and then you try and start a new gym routine and, you're super motivated, you go to a Tony Robbins event, you're I'm going to change my life. Shout out to Tony. Even though you're doing good things, because your bucket's already 70% full, you're driving yourself over the ledge, and then you think you might be doing the right things, but you're actually making things worse, because at the end of the day, the main thing that drives testosterone down is high levels of stress. You can't have a well-functioning HPA axis or adrenal axis when you're pumping out cortisol 24/7. Because on the other side of cortisol is DHEAs, which is the master hormone, which then helps you create testosterone. You can't have both of them moving at the same time. So the biggest advice I give to guys, and this happens all the time, they're like, oh, should I take TRT or should I take Tonkat Ali? I'm like, you can take all those things, but if you've still got all these inputs you're not dealing with, then you're not really going to see much of a benefit.
Huge benefit.
So I think go back to maths in high school. What was it? BODMAS, subtraction before addition. Same principle. It's maybe take out the alcohol, the toxic food, the toxic relationships, the toxic environments, the three things I always talk about: food, relationships, environments. Take those 3 things out of your life. And just by doing that, this happened to me. My testosterone went from 373 to 984 in 4 months, naturally.
Just removing those 3 things.
Yeah, this is when, when I mentioned in the form, essentially, when you said what was the turning point in your life, or one of them, when I closed my business in Melbourne, moved up to Gold Coast, ended my relationship, closed my business, moved to Gold Coast, environment, went from Melbourne to Gold Coast, got out of COVID and lockdowns, relationships, ended a relationship, which wasn't the best. Completely changed my lifestyle, food, training, sunlight, being in Gold Coast. I didn't take any test boosters. I didn't do anything unnatural. I was barely even taking supplements. It was literally just those 3 things, managing stress, and my lifestyle had a complete overhaul. And I wasn't trying to improve my tests. It was just doing before and after blood work. And I have the blood work, I can share it. Some people are like, oh, you're full of shit. I literally have the blood work. You can see it 4 months apart on iScreen, 373 or something like that to 984. remember being pissed off because I was like, that's so close to 1,000.
Right.
I don't think I'll ever get that close again naturally because I was, 25 and had a little stress in my life. But the point is, stress down, testosterone through the roof. So that's the biggest driver for a lot of guys is like see what you can remove, and not just for guys and testosterone, but everyone. It's like for a lot of people when they come to me, it's like, what peptides can I take? What supplements can I take? What protocol should I do? For a lot of people, that first 60 to 90 days is more about identifying and removing all the shit that's currently keeping you stuck.
Yeah.
It's like business. If you had someone come to you for business mentoring, like, oh, what strategy should I add? It's like, let's just Alex Hormozy mode, like pick one thing and do it properly and remove the 7 or 8 things you're doing. You don't need 10 offers. You need one offer to do that works really well.
And that does the bulk of the heavy lifting.
Yeah. Because the other 7 are just cock blocking you anyway, because you're focusing on 8 things. Same as health. It's like people are taking 15 supplements, doing a 45-minute morning routine, doing all the things they should be doing or think they should be doing. But then you ask them the question, why are you doing this? Have you got data that drives that decision? It's, oh no, it's Instagram or it's what someone told me to do. I'm like, cool, let's get your bloods done. Let's see what you actually need. Remove 90% of the shit that you're doing. Focus on the 10% that's actually going to move the needle forward. Do 2 or 3 things at once, because you can't do everything at once. It's like, imagine you wanted to do a bodybuilding competition and run a marathon. Like, it's just not going to work.
It's opposing goals.
Yeah. That's what people are doing. They're trying to do everything at once. So that's why with my program, it's very strategic. It's like, cool, it's going to take 12 months, but it's like first 90 days, metabolic health, second 90 days, microbiome health, third 90 days, hormonal health, last for 90 days, brain health. And we do it in that specific sequence because I know this system needs to complement this system and this system needs to complement that system. The same way it's like, we're going to do zone 2 and high volume, build capacity. Then we're going to do hypertrophy. Then we're going to do strength. And then we're going to peak. It's the same shit. So I think business, high performance in terms of like athletes and health, disease, all the principles are very similar. It just needs to be structured and periodized properly.
There's been such I suppose a lot of information coming out about the contrast therapy.
Yeah.
What is your view on the benefits or the pros and cons of contrast therapy?
I think a lot of people are majoring in the minors, is my first point. I had a conversation with a client yesterday about this, and I said it's one of the best therapies, in my opinion, that you could be doing for your health overall if we zoom out and look at it as like from a global approach. So I think a lot of the negatives come around, okay, should you be doing it post-training for like hypertrophy? It's blunting the hypertrophy effect, which for sure. But I think zooming out, when it comes to the studies around the negatives of blunting the hypertrophy effect and muscle protein synthesis, is doing extreme cold therapy within 8 hours of training. So I think if you want to be safe and get the best of both worlds, it'd be do contrast therapy. If you're going to do anything extreme cold, like an ice bath, keep it away from training. Because pre-training, we know if you're going to train, do you want your joints to be warm and full of blood or constricted and stiff?
You want to be warm.
Yeah. So then this is one of those things where it's like, again, personal anecdote is not the highest level of evidence, but I'd say I went through a period of like 2 years where I'd have my Saturday morning where I deadlift, and I always did it on the Saturday morning because I'm like, I want to have time. I don't want to be rushed during the week. I would wake up, do a 5-minute ice bath, go smash a bagel at Tart Bakery, and then go to Nexus Performance and smash my deadlift session. Best session of the week. I'm like, the ice bath got me jacked up, food obviously got me full, and then I trained. Again, that's just anecdote, not science. And I have a lot of clients who are like, I feel amazing. I do ice and then I go train. So I think as long as you're warming up after you do it though, because it's like, well, the ice bath's going to make you cold. So I wouldn't go deadlift straight away, but it's like, all right, I'd ice bath. I feel amazing. It's got the adrenaline and dopamine. I feel amazing. But then you got to make sure obviously you're warming up your joints properly. So I think pre-training, I'm not really opposed to it. I think as long as you have a proper warm-up process and you don't go straight to a 200 kilo deadlift, you warm up your joints, you do a bit of zone 2 cardio, get your heart rate up, get your temperature up. I'm not really opposed to it. Post-training, I definitely would steer clear of it within 8 hours if you're doing extreme cold. So I'm talking like sub 12 degrees. Post-training, it's going to blunt muscle protein synthesis, and that's science, not opinion. In terms of contrast therapy though, being rotations from cold and hot, contrast therapy is generally designed to be done at a moderate to temperature. So we're looking like anywhere from like 8 to 12 degrees. It's not going to be like super cold. I wouldn't really be doing that. And the main benefit is really going to be your lymphatic system and your circulatory system and your nervous system. So I think it just depends on why you're actually doing it. As with any intervention, like what is the outcome you're trying to achieve? If I have a client who is inflamed, puffy, and they've got, inflammation, gut issues, immune issues, then supporting those systems is going to be worth its weight in gold. And maybe the potential 10% negative in hypertrophy, like it's 10% over here to gain 50% over here. And if we zoom out in the scheme of things, it's like, all right, if I've got a client who's got
cost benefit.
Yeah. If I've got a client who's like, can't get out of bed and they have low energy, do I really give a shit about 10% decrease in muscle protein synthesis? Like probably not. The benefit of them optimizing their lymphatic system and their circulatory system is going to be 10x more benefit than the negative cost over here. So yeah, if we zoom out, we go, cool. We know when we go into cold, we have vasoconstriction. When we go into hot, we have vasodilation. So blood vessels get smaller and larger, more blood flow to the area. And your lymphatic system, you know, your lymphatic system? Yeah. So your lymphatic system, just for those listening, if they don't. So think arteries, we have oxygenated blood full of nutrients come into the cell, and then the cell absorbs it. And then we have veins, which take deoxygenated blood without nutrients back to the heart, and the heart pumps it all around. During that process, all the waste products or the cost of adaptation or the cost of that transaction, we have toxins that will go perpendicular to that cell. So it's like arteries in, veins out, perpendicular, all the toxins go out. And the system that's responsible for removing those toxins is the lymphatic system. So the lymphatic system comes along, takes all those toxins, transports it to the liver, and the liver has to do its thing, and we have to get rid of all those toxins. You have 3 to 5 liters of blood, 12 to 15 liters of lymph. Super important, part of your immune system. So if that system's not working very well, you're going to have a lot of gluggy built up toxins in your body, which is what a lot of people who have inflammation have chronic health issues. They have poor detox pathways, they have overloaded lymphatic systems, and they're not working very well. So for your lymphatic system, it doesn't have a pump like the heart. It works on mechanical movement. So the only ways to get your lymphatic system pump in is movement, breath work, because your diaphragm acts as a pump and creates hydraulic pump and moves fluid around the body, or contrast therapy, because then your arteries and veins are creating that constriction and dilation, which is like, imagine I had, make sure this is closed. Imagine this is a tube of toothpaste. And you know when you get to the end of the tube of toothpaste and you like really don't want to go to the shops and buy another one, so you just keep squeezing it like inch by inch until you get that tiny little slither out. Same thing with the lymphatic system. It's like all the gunk is here, I squeeze here, it moves here. I squeeze here, it moves here. So you got to manually move that stuff around the body. And that's where contrast therapy is really, really powerful, because you're creating the mechanical pumps to move fluids around the body. What do most people do all day?
Probably sit down.
Sit on their ass. So like you have literally stagnation. Stagnation is the root cause of all disease. Like if you have stagnation through your cells and through your system, it is going to be a breeding ground for the disease. One of the best analogies I learned off my mentor, one of my mentors, Dr. Perry Nicholson, Stop Chasing Pain. He's like a guru when it comes to the lymphatic system. He talks about it like a fish tank and the water filter. You know, if the water filter is not working effectively, what happens to the fish tank?
Yeah.
That's like your lymphatic system. So if your lymphatic system's not working, come back to the fish tank in a month, looks, horrible. What's going to happen to the fish? The fish gets sick or they die. So, do you take the fish out of the tank, or do you change the filter, or like, what do you do? So yeah, if it's not the fish's fault, it's the environment. What causes the environment? The lymphatic system. So if we work backwards in that analogy, I think contrast therapy has amazing benefits for overall health, reduces inflammation, improves which it does so by improving the detox pathways of your lymphatic system, your circulatory system. And the third benefit as well is nervous system regulation, assuming you have the temperature right, because doing contrast therapy can be really relaxing if it's, 12 degrees and you have good stress tolerance. If you did contrast therapy and it's 3 degrees and you're someone who's already really stressed and you jump in an ice bath, probably not so good for your stress tolerance. So I think as long as the temperature is right, the dosage is right, contrast therapy can be one of the best tools in the toolbox. I recommend to my clients, if you have capacity, like we're pretty fortunate in Gold Coast, we have quite a few number of places, P3, rigs, etc. 3 to 4 times a week, if you can do 2 minutes in the cold, 4 minutes in the hot, 3 to 5 rotations with proper nasal breathing, box breathing, where you can keep your nervous system calm, your heart rate down, you'll feel $1 million afterwards. You'll sleep like a baby. You'll be less inflamed. You'll probably drop a few kilos of water weight. Again, calorie deficits. I'm not, no pseudoscience here. You're not going to lose weight just from contrast therapy. But if you were to do that and you were someone puffy and inflamed, you will generally notice you'll lean out alongside following a proper diet, of course. So I reckon it's super powerful. One of my favorite things. I wish it was more accessible. But if it's not accessible to get to a center, the Timu version is to get a hot bath and then a cold shower and just 15 seconds facing forward, 15 seconds side to side, do 4 rotations times 2. There's 2 minutes in the cold and then get into the hot bath.
Yeah, that practically could give so much benefit, even just in such a simple environment like a shower.
And I always think of like, what are interventions that are multiple birds with one stone. So I think if you're doing contrast therapy, you're also going to be off your phone because you can't have the phone in the water.
Exactly.
Well, I've had some people at rigs lately where they're like, bro, what are you doing? Like, why are you on your phone? Just chuck it out for 30 minutes.
That's true.
Yeah, so no phone. You're doing breath work. So you're down-regulating your nervous system. You're stimulating your vagus nerve. You're working on your lymphatic system and your circulatory system, the systems that keep your body alive. And for 30 minutes, you can just be out of stress mode and into Zen mode, which a lot of people it's not a scientific term. I say you need more white time in your diary. And white time is the opposite of what most people's diaries look like, I'm sure.
We've glorified being busy in society, haven't we?
Yeah. I used to be the same, mate. It'd be like, if there's a gap in my calendar, it needs to be filled. It's not productive. What am I doing? What hormones you say? Versus now I say to people, like, you can go hard, but the analogy I explained to a few clients the other day, I had a call about stress was you wake up and let's say you're at neutral and then you start to ascend, the metaphorical stress mountain. If you then have a little buffer in your calendar, it's 5 minutes, even just some breath work, some box breathing, physiological sigh, we bring it back down to 0 and then cool, you're ready for your afternoon stint and then back again. So if you get to the end of the day, you're relatively at net neutral versus what a lot of people do is like they spend the whole day in stress. They get to 7, 8 p.m. and then they're like, I'm going to do 5 minutes of journaling and breath work. And then they wonder why their sleep is shit. I'm like, well, your body's kind of like, that's cute. You've just spent 12 hours in consistent stress and now you want to down-regulate that in 5 minutes. Like, that's not how it works. So I think you can buffer, like I've got the Aura Ring. It literally tells you how much time you spend in stress versus restored. You can have a solid 6 hour to 15 minute ratio of stress to restore and still go pretty hard. So the ratio is pretty good. What's that? 1 to 12. No, 6 times 4, 24. 1 to 24 ratio of stress to relaxation. So you don't have to have a lot of time, even if it's 2 minutes, 3 times a day. It's enough to buffer that stress and keep you out of being in that stress the whole day.
Quick pause. If you're listening right now and you know you weren't built for an average income or a life stuck behind a desk, this is for you. We are hosting a 90-minute FDR masterclass live with me, where I break down exactly how to become a highly skilled finance development representative in the remote sales space. You'll see how top reps work US accounts close from home and position themselves to earn 6 figures remotely. Now, at the end of the masterclass, we'll invite attendees to apply to work with us directly. From there, we'll be selecting 30 people to move forward, where we'll provide elite training, hands-on support, and physical help to place you in roles on US accounts with a clear pathway to earn 6 figures while working from home. Now, this is not for everyone. It's for people who want freedom and are willing to do what it takes to actually earn it. Now, if that's you, I want you to comment in the comments freedom to register for the next masterclass, or head to the link in the bio right now. Okay, let's head back to the show. Cognitive function is one of those things that I think of from a business owner's perspective that, I want to be at my best, right?
Yeah.
We talk about peak performance. There's one thing being
sharp.
Yeah, well, I love being physically fit and being physically imposing or looking good. But I think about a cognitive function being as sharp as attack as often as possible.
Yeah.
What are some of the ways that then high performers can structure, I suppose, their approach to be as mentally sharp as possible, which obviously would mean that they're better at leadership, dealing with stress, making clear decisions, speaking from stage, hosting events?
Yeah. Well, I'd say literally that's number one. Every single person I work with now, it's cognitive function, especially just because the guys I work with are usually 30 to 50. So I think the vanity of being shredded and having a six pack isn't as important now. It's kind of I want to be fit enough to look the part and feel confident, so my wife still attracts me, but my main thing is I want to be crushing business, make lots of money and have a good life. So yeah, cognitive function is definitely the number one. I think physique is a lot of times people will say they want it, but they don't really want it, versus cognitive function is the actual thing they want. But yeah, in terms of answering the question, the same process I went through before is the exact same thing in terms of why, because I'd say the two most important things to optimizing cognitive function, number one, or three actually. Number one would be identifying any limitations or any physiological drivers of stress in the body, specifically around the gut microbiome. So you've probably heard this before, your gut-brain axis is really important. 80% of information from your gut goes to your brain, 20% from your brain to your gut, which means there's 4 times more information going this direction than this direction. So if you want to have good cognitive function starts in your microbiome, doesn't start in your brain. a lot of people get that wrong, and they're looking at nootropics and mushrooms and alpha GPC and all these supplements that are working at the level of the brain. But it's like working here when the warehouse that's producing these chemicals. So things like neurotransmitters. So for example, dopamine, 50% of it's produced in your gut. Serotonin, up to 95% of it. You do have production internally in your brain as well. So a lot of people say, if your gut's fucked, like you're not producing any. You still produce some in your brain directly, but most of it comes from your small intestine. So if we think if there's damage to your intestine, if there's low beneficial bacteria, so the two I always see on a stool test, bifidobacterium, lactobacillus, they help directly produce dopamine, serotonin. You can't really expect good cognitive function because, let's break it down. Dopamine, focus, motivation, drive. Serotonin is emotional regulation. It optimizes your bowel motility. So if you're constipated, diarrhea, could be low serotonin. And serotonin is also needed to convert into melatonin to help you sleep. So all of a sudden it's like, all right, well, just from having a digestive gut issue, you're affecting sleep, emotional regulation, which is going to be decision making. Have you ever had one of those moments where maybe you say something stupid and then a little bit later you're like, fuck, what happened?
No,
never.
Never.
Verify that with your partner. Blood. You get less blood in your prefrontal cortex, and low levels of serotonin, which helps you emotionally regulate. Not a good combination if you're a leader. So all of a sudden you're affecting every single system in your body from the gut. So I think that's number one thing would be stool test. What's going on there? Number two, is there any deficiencies? So specifically deficiencies like B12, or there's a lot of deficiencies, but B12 would be a big one, B vitamins in particular. And the last one would be the DNA test, because DNA tests are wild when it comes to understanding your cognitive function. Like for me, I've always been told I have ADHD and need medication, going down all the supplement routes of, like B vitamins and all these other things. And a lot of the times I was taking these supplements that were designed for optimizing cognitive function. But then I'd take it and I'd feel like really hyperstimulated, or I'd feel really flat. And I'm like, this doesn't make sense, Old mate, I won't name names actually, but a really popular figure on Instagram always says, you just got to do your methylation test and then just take your B12 and everything will go away. I took B12 in high dose and it made me feel like I'd done crack cocaine. So why is that? Because then I have other clients who have high dose B12 and they're like, oh my God, I swear it solved all my problems. I feel amazing. It's because you can have this thing called the MTFR gene, or MTFHR gene, which we all have heard of before, which is very common, by the way. Up to 80% of the population has the gene. So it's not like the end of the world if you have it, but you have to understand, okay, if I have it, number one, do I have it? Yes or no? Number two, which variant do I have? Because there's a number of variants. It's not just you have a one size fits all. And this is where the supplementation really gets personalized, because it's like, well, we could both have the same genetic mutation, but we have a different pathway that's affected, or a different variation of that gene. Therefore, when you take B12 in high dose, you feel dialed in. When I take B12 in high dose, I feel like I've done crack cocaine. So if we hadn't done the test, we wouldn't know. And then we're just taking generic baseline supplements. So I think that's where like DNA testing has its power, is like once you've done the prep work, in this case, hey, Dan, I want to be cognitively sharp, et cetera. Cool. Is there any deficiencies in the blood? Is there any inflammation? Because inflammation is going to affect the brain. Deficiencies are going to affect the brain. Step one, let's just top you up. Step two, well, what caused that? Oh, I can see you got, infections here and low beneficial bacteria. Let's get rid of all that. Cool. Now we're producing our own levels of serotonin, dopamine. Cool. Now let's really optimize things. Let's understand your genetic blueprint profile. And now when it comes to supplementation, we're not just taking generic things. We're taking a, Shane DaCosta blend.
Yeah,
we're
bespoke.
not taking, like it's bespoke because it needs to be. So as soon as I changed everything in my supplements like that, it was almost like instant the next day. I was like, oh my God, I feel like I've just seen the light. So I think that's the most important. And the one thing I didn't touch on is, which is really important, because I don't say this to scare people, but the reality is like one of the worst diseases out there for men in particular is what? Other than cardiovascular, is what's the number two, would you say? It relates to your point about cognitive function.
Would it be dementia?
Yeah, dementia.
Yeah.
Dementia, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's. So when it comes to Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, dementia, two of the things you can see is this thing called tau protein and beta amyloid plaques, which you can see these things in the small intestine decades before they aggregate in the brain. So when they do the diagnostics, you can see, do they have these two diagnostic markers in the brain? If so, then we can see that that's neurodegeneration, and eventually, we can have the diagnosis. But you can pick up on that 10, 20, 30 years before if you could pick up on a stool test, because a lot of these things start in the gut and they translocate, which means they travel from one spot to another. They travel via the bloodstream to the brain, and they start to then cause issues in the brain. So if we break it down super simple, we have stress from the 7 different areas I talked about. Stress causes inflammation. Inflammation causes tissue damage. We break down the gut lining of our gut, so the gut barrier essentially. And then from there, say toxins come into the bloodstream. We only have one bloodstream. That bloodstream, toxins travel from the bloodstream to the brain. We have this thing that protects us called the blood-brain barrier. A lot of these toxins, in particular one called LPS, can actually damage the gut-brain barrier. Sorry, the blood-brain barrier. And you can Google that, LPS, induced damage to the brain. When toxins can now get into the brain, you can increase this thing called glutamate, which is an excitatory neurotransmitter. So think you've got GABA, which is the calming neurotransmitter, helps you sleep. Glutamate's the opposite, makes you feel really anxious, really jittery, hyperactive, which happens in a lot of people with ADHD. So again, ADHD, pretty interesting, what I just explained. Not saying that's what causes it, but hey, maybe that might be a contributing factor. And wink, wink, it might be. But we can't say that. So anyway, excitatory neurotransmitters, glutamate. Glutamate has a neurotoxic effect on the brain. So it can actually start to damage dopaminergic neurons. So dopaminergic, what does that mean? Dopamine, essentially creation of dopamine. Yeah, so dopaminergic neurons. So if we have neurotoxicity and we're damaging the neurons that create dopamine, you can't really expect to have good levels of dopamine, can you? So now we look at, okay, well, the warehouse that produces dopamine is damaged in the gut, and now we're damaging the neurons that produce dopamine in the brain. Well, how well can you expect your brain to function? So short term, what will that look like? Poor focus, can't be fuckeditis, which is otherwise known as low motivation, low drive. And that'll appear 30 years before. So you're 35 and you're just like, I forget my words a bit, a bit low on motivation, can't focus, those kind of things, but you don't really think much of it because everyone's experiencing it. But those early signs that are stopping you from having high performance right now are the same signs that you're going to have a problem in 30 years time. So I don't say to scare people, but it's just the reality. It's like the symptoms that you're having right now are the whispers. And if you ignore them for 30 years, you're more likely to have things like dementia, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, because look at the studies. Well, it's not even the studies. It's like just basic biology. We learned this at neuroscience in uni is, the reduction in dopaminergic neurons is going to be one of the driving factors in things like dementia and the aggregation of tau protein, beta amyloid plaques, which you can see in the gut. So if you're someone who's 35 to 45 and you're experiencing brain fog, low energy, poor focus, slurring your words, forgetting your sentences, that's not something to brush off and go, it's just because I'm busy and because I'm stressed. Stress will exacerbate it, but it's highly likely you have some sort of, drivers happening in the body that are making those symptoms worse. So step 1, get your bloods done. We can see inflammation straight away. Step 2, what's causing it? Okay, we can see the gut's a bit cooked. Awesome. Spend a few months, clear that. Now, awesome. We've gotten rid of the risk factors. We've prevented bad things happening. Now let's switch gears and let's get your brain on rocket fuel. Let's give you the octane 98 and get you.
What is that octane 98? What is that?
Oh, it's been like unleaded 98, fill your
so
brain.
what would that be?
What would it be?
Yeah, like what's that sort of third step where then you get the brain on that level?
Yes, that'd be like the process I said before. So like think bloods and stool. Yeah. I think if we break it into like 2 simple big pictures, I call it restore and optimize. So my slogan for my business, restore, optimize, perform. Restore, bloods and stool. Look, this is kind of like below the iceberg, things that are causing the problem. Then optimize is above the iceberg. And this is hormones, neurotransmitters, adrenals, like these are the systems that make you feel good. And then perform is obviously once we've done that, now we can really dial in. So I think if you look at it that way, you go, okay, well, the things that most people want, they want dialed in sharp cognitive function, which you mentioned. They want to have good hormone function. They don't really say that, but it's like if you want to have good body composition and feel good, the hormones drive everything. To have those 2 things, you need to have your endocrine system and your hormone system and your neurotransmitters firing on all on all fronts. But in order for you to have those systems functioning well, you need to have the other systems doing their job. So there's a hierarchy of importance in the body. Think nervous system, I touched on it before. Nervous system, immune system, gastrointestinal system, everything else. Guess what 2 systems are at the bottom of importance in your body?
At the absolute bottom.
The absolute bottom. So think if your body had like 1 ATP left and it was going to donate it to the most important thing to keep you alive, it would be, nervous system, immune system, gut. What's the least important thing that your body can live without? It's nice to have, not need to have. You have a lot of it.
muscular.
Yeah, I'll stay humble, man. Come on. Yeah. So yeah, musculoskeletal system, bottom of the food chain. And this is interesting because it kind of, your question earlier of how did I transition? I used to work as an osteopath. It was all musculoskeletal. People come in with musculoskeletal issues. But it's like, is it actually a musculoskeletal issue or is it a musculoskeletal symptom?
It's symptomatic rather than
it's presenting as a musculoskeletal issue, but it's actually maybe an immune issue or it's a gut issue, which sounds really whack. It's like, what do you mean by like knee pain's caused by my immune system? What's like, well, which system is responsible for inflammation? Anything that has itis on it, immune problem. So that's another tangent. But anyway, musculoskeletal, bottom of the food chain, and then endocrine, because, and you see this in bodybuilding, like females, they get really lean, all of a sudden hormones shut down, turn off. It's like, does your body need to bring another human into this world when you don't even have enough energy to keep yourself? Cool. So like the way I think about it is like, imagine you go to the shops, credit cards don't exist, FPOS don't exist, you're living back in 1600, all you can pay with is cash, and you get to the front and your groceries cost $120 and you have 100. What do you do?
You got to sacrifice something.
Yeah, you got to prioritize. So cool. Okay, what are the essentials? Steak, eggs. Sorry to any vegans out there. Milk, etc. And then you get rid of the shit. I don't really need the sauce. I don't really need the chocolate. I don't really need the ice cream. The body does the same thing. It's like, all right, we have 100 ATP right now, and it costs 120 ATP to stay alive. Okay, well, what do we prioritize? What's not essential? We need our brain, we need our heart, we need our arteries, we need our lymphatic system, we need our gut. What don't we need? Okay, all that skeletal muscle is kind of nice to have, not need to have. So you see people who are chronically stressed, all of a sudden they're atrophying, they're losing muscle. They don't look too good when you see them 6 months later. And then what else happens? Their hormones are all over the place. Their adrenals are cooked. They have adrenal fatigue. They have, endocrine issues. They have PCOS, they have endometriosis, they have all these things. And then you look at it and go, okay, well, we're going to treat the endo, we're going to treat the PCOS, we're going to treat the low testosterone, we're going to treat the chronic tendonitis. It's
all in isolation.
Yeah, but is anyone going, okay, well, maybe it's a flow down effect of we just don't have enough energy. And this is a bit of a rabbit hole, but we're going there. So I think every disease is just energy deficit. And you need to find where the energy deficit or where the energy leakage is. And if you find where the leakage is or where the deficit is, then you can fix the problem. So it comes back to exactly why I structure the program the way I do. If nervous, immune, and gut aren't functioning very well, they're not at 100%, then the flow down effect is always going to have symptoms lower down. And where does every single person you speak to have symptoms? Low energy, brain fog. Cool. Adrenals, cognitive, body composition. I have too much fat, not enough muscle. Endocrine system. I have chronic injuries and pain. Musculoskeletal system. So like interesting. Every single, let's say 90% of people's presentations are down here, but most of them are caused by up here. But then what we look at is treating that. And this is what I got pissed off with when I was in the clinic, because I was like, well, why do I keep treating you and you just keep coming back with the same thing? Like, this makes no sense. Oh, interesting. Tell me about your history. Let's go a bit deeper. Oh, you also have bloating. You also have food sensitivities. Interesting that you've got back pain. Where the nerves are that supply your gut, your gastrointestinal tract, T10 to L4, is the exact same location as your lumbar spine. So if you have, chronic lower back issues, but you've also got chronic inflammation of your gastrointestinal tract, and those same nerves converge onto the same level of the spine and take that information to the brain, maybe your brain's a little bit confused right now where the pain's coming from. You have this deep gnawing pain, which is actually, a fact. You've got nerves that come from the front. So I think your spine is like this. You've got nerves that come around the front and supply the viscera. You have nerves that come around the back and supply the musculoskeletal. Those nerves converge onto the same nerve root and travel up to the brain. Your brain can't differentiate where pain's coming from. It just knows there's a signal coming. So you get this dull, ache, vague pain. And that's the way you could always pick it up. Someone that has a disc bulge hurts when I bend forward, feels good when I go back. Very mechanical, very simple. There's a very clear pattern. Someone who has this deep visceral pain where it's like, there's no real relieving factors. There's no real things that make it worse. It's just always there. It's always a 4 out of 10. It kind of feels deep. It kind of feels gnawing and nothing, it just doesn't go away. It's like, interesting. You ask them those questions every single time, they'll have some sort of gastrointestinal inflammatory problem. And until you fix that, the back pain is always going to be there.
So purely from
massive tangent, but it's somewhat valuable to someone.
Purely from, a point of interest then, I'm curious because we're talking about things that are from a health perspective, performance aspect, and connecting the dots on so many things and looking at all the different systems. I'm curious then, just from a daily habit perspective, so many Australians drink alcohol every single day. How does that fit in, if at all, to a plan as someone would come to see you, for example?
I mean, it doesn't. It's killing you slowly. It's a poison. I think, it's pro-inflammatory and serves no nutritional benefit and doesn't really have a purpose. I think, again, I'm a human first. So, I mean, I understand the social benefit, and obviously, sometimes there can be a net positive. Like I said before, it's, 10% negative for the inflammation, 20% benefit because you're not staying in isolating yourself all week and you go out and have a drink. So again, everything is multifactorial when you look at it through the biopsychosocial lens. But I think anyone who works for me, I'm pretty brutal with it because I'm like, well, hey, you're investing a lot of money in your health. Like, what's the point of moving the needle forward if you're going to kind of go 2 steps forward, 1 step back? And we know that it's pushing us in the opposite direction of what we want. But yeah, I guess, I don't know if that answers the question. I think, facts say alcohol is not good for you. And my job's not to be nice to you. It's to make you feel better. So I think I'm pretty direct with it. But I think, again, I'm not the type of person that's like, oh, you had a drink, you're a bad person. Like, hey, a lot of my clients, I encourage it. Hey, you're having a weekend, like enjoy yourself. Just, make sure you're back on track on Monday and don't blow out. But there's certain times it's more important than others too. I think when it comes to phase 1 and 2, the restore phase, where like I have people where there's a lot of shit we're trying to deal with, no pun intended. During that phase, I'm pretty brutal of like, okay, this is going to affect us pretty negatively and slow us down. The faster we can get through phase 1 and 2, the faster we can get onto the other side and start feeling good. So like really, I encourage minimal to no drinking versus if it was someone like yourself and it's like, obviously I don't know your intrinsics, but let's say, you're pretty healthy, you're pretty fit, there's no real immediate issues. I'm like, all right, it's not ideal, but overall the net overall is you're still 95% diligent and here, and I'm not going to be losing sleep over it. But for someone who's like chronic disease, autoimmunity, and I guess also just depends where they're at too. If they're coming to you and they're like, oh, my life sucks, I have no energy, like everything's so bad, and then they're taking alcohol, I'm like, my empathy bucket gets a bit low because I'm like, well, mate, like you're literally poisoning yourself. Versus if someone like you and like, I feel pretty good out of drink, I'm going for dinner for dance tonight, I'm going to have a glass of red wine. Like, mate, it's all good. But just make sure you 95% of the time you're diligent.
Caffeine.
Caffeine. Caffeine. I don't know why everyone bitches on caffeine. Caffeine. Don't know why I swore. Very technical bitches. Mate, I'm getting comfortable apparently. Caffeine, a lot of benefits health-wise. Obviously performance enhancing. I think caffeine is amazing. Has I would say net positive for 98% of people, unless there's a reason you can't have it. I don't see any downside to it. The main thing would be making sure your timing and dosage is correct. So I say 400 milligrams a day is absolute maximum. That's a lot of caffeine. It's
a lot of caffeine. I think the average shot of coffee is about 40 to 50,
60 to 70.
60 to 70.
Yeah. So if you have let's say a standard, if it's in Melbourne, it's probably 80. If it's in Gold Coast, it's probably 50. But let's say average
is coffee strong.
Yeah, average is 70 maybe. If you have a double shot, so like a standard latte, you're looking at 140 milligrams. So like if on average, you're looking at 3 standard coffees a day would be like 420. For most people, I'd say 2 is the sweet spot. But yeah, that is technically the limit if you read the studies, 400 milligrams. I think as long as you're not exceeding 400 milligrams a day or you're having it too late in the day, and this is where personal variation comes in and genetics are really useful because like for me, for example, I'm a slow metabolizer of caffeine. So I notice if I have caffeine within like 10 hours of going to bed, I'll notice like not just subjective, like objective as well. Like deep sleep is less, sleep latency is higher. My resting heart rate doesn't drop until almost 4 a.m. instead of like 1 a.m. It's like I notice it. But I also notice it in terms of volume. If I have 3 coffees a day, and even if I finish 12 hours before bed, I'll still notice that my stats are worse. So it's like, that's where those things come into mind of like, there's textbook of like what you should do. And then there's also like genetic variance and just common sense of like understanding how your body reacts to something.
How you feel.
Yeah. So I didn't need a genetic test to tell me that. I was just like, oh, cool. I've just understood it. I did the genetic test and I was like, makes a lot of sense, because I can tell if I have caffeine late in the day, I feel shit. If I have 3, even if it's early in the day, I feel shit. So yeah, I'd say number 1 has a lot of health benefits. It is performance enhancing. Pre-workout, it's great. Cognitive function, it's great. Just make sure you keep your total intake capped. Make sure you're having it at least 8 to 10 hours before bed. If you're curious, do a genetic DNA test. You can see how fast you metabolize it, how well you handle it. And if you're someone who notices you don't feel good on it, then just common sense, don't take it. I think the main downside of caffeine comes from when you have energy drinks and things that are a concoction of other things. That's where it can get a bit murky sometimes. So I just keep it super simple. Pre-workout is a shot of caffeine, some coconut water and a banana.
Yeah.
I'm not very adventurous.
Yeah, once upon a time, back in the bodybuilding days, we used to have some crazy concoctions like pre-workouts that were full of so many different chemicals. When you read the labels, it just becomes this.
There's one that's good. It's called Caged Unchained. I've used that one before. I don't really have pre-workouts, but I had a client who was a bodybuilder and he was like, dude, this one's like really clean. And I looked into it and I was actually surprised because it was like the ingredients are really good.
Yeah.
But it was like, yeah, it was wild though. Like the ingredients in it was, I can't remember if off the top of my head it was years ago, but I remember looking at it and being like, that would make you want to run through a wall. But they did do a good job. It was all
good.
Yeah. But what goes up must come down is the big thing you got to remember. So I think we zoom out and go summation of stress. If you've already got multiple areas of your life that are driving stress, driving cortisol, you probably don't need to push the accelerator even more. I always think of like your accelerator is your sympathetic nervous system and your brake is your parasympathetic nervous system. We need to have a balance between accelerator and brake. And most people just think about stress management as like imagine you're driving on the highway at 100 kilometers an hour and you want to slow down. You just take your foot off the accelerator, it's going to take forever. So you need to actively push the brake.
In the opposite direction, yeah.
So most people just kind of go, oh, I'll just, I won't have as many coffees or, I won't. They'll limit the stresses, but they're not actively pushing the parasympathetics. And that's where contrast therapy I was really a big fan of because I think that's an example of a break, meditation, down regulation, breath work, white time, meditation. All those things are going to be actively pushing the brake, more of your yin, and then training, ice bath, sauna is more of your yang. Even though they're all beneficial, it's like you need that balance of yin and yang or sympathetic, parasympathetic or positive, negative is always, your body's always trying to find balance. And if you're just crushing business, crushing gym, crushing ice baths, you're like David Goggins, go, getting shit done. It's like, you will get shit done, but I hate to break it to you, you can't break science or biology. It'll catch up with you. So making sure we have that balance and look at how can we be a 8 out of 10 for the next 2 decades rather than be a 10 out of 10 for 2 years.
Maybe
and then
2 years.
Take a year to recover like what I did. Yeah.
The supplement that I also want to touch on that it's not necessarily new, but it's just getting a lot more airtime at the moment that I'm curious to see what maybe some of your thoughts are and what some of the data would suggest being the benefits of is creatine.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. It's been around for so long, It's like we've always known the benefits. But
it was the first supplement that I recall back in my teens when I was getting into natural bodybuilding that was spoken of a lot. And when you looked at it from a natural perspective, it was that one thing that we understood we could take that had a legitimate performance enhancement that had some good research already behind it and that would improve output.
Yeah.
So it seems to be coming back quite a bit now. I've seen some, just podcasts and different people talking about some of the benefits, even from a cognitive perspective. And
yeah, it's more of the recent stuff. Like it's always been around for 3 to 5 grams a day keeps the doctor away. Is creatine. I think I always say to every single client, 5 grams a day until the day you die is a pretty good idea. I think it's inexpensive, it's effective, it's safe, it's the most well-researched supplement. I think you're doing yourself a disservice if you don't take it every day. I think 5 grams a day would be the sweet spot for most people, just for like a broad spectrum benefit. There has been studies on like the higher doses of 15 to 20, even 25 grams a day for
loading phases and then then maintenance phases.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's like old school bodybuilding of we have to load it and then manage. I think honestly, you hit a certain point of saturation, then it just gets to a point of it's like muscle protein synthesis. It takes 25 grams to activate muscle protein synthesis. And then anything above that's just kind of like, you don't flick the light switch on harder. Once the light switch is on. So it's kind of the same with creatine. It's like you can flick the light switch a little bit harder and get to saturation. Then eventually your cells are saturated and you can't handle anymore. So 3 to 5 grams tends to be the sweet spot. So that's more of a musculoskeletal ATP, perspective of like storing creatine in the cells for ATP, which is obviously your explosive, molecule for power, strength, etc. And we have, 6 to 10 seconds of ATP storage, and it takes 3 minutes for 90% of it to get replenished. So 3 to 5 grams a day would be great if you're someone doing strength training, bodybuilding, resistance training. Does have benefits for cognitive health in terms of being neuroprotective. But the main study is when it comes to sleep and sleep deprivation. So I had a client ask this the other day, should we take 20 grams every day forever? I think, to me, I don't think I'm that convinced that it's that beneficial from what I've seen in terms of taking 20 grams every day forever. But what I think would be beneficial is in times of sleep deprivation. So the studies they did on that was if you and me both had 4 hours of sleep, and obviously 4 hours of sleep is going to be a dramatic decrease in cognitive function, up to 30 to 40% decrease in memory, recall, problem solving ability. They've done studies on that, cool, they make you do certain cognitive function tasks. So we know that if you have sleep deprivation, even for one night, you're going to reduce cognitive function significantly. So let's say we both sleep for 4 hours and then Shane gets 20 grams of creatine and I get 0 grams or 3 grams of creatine. It would say that you perform better than I do. with the creatine. So creatine will help dampen the negative effects of having that shit night's sleep. Outside of that, I don't really think it's necessary having 15, 20 grams a day. I think you're just going through your creatine faster.
Interesting.
But that's just early stages of the studies I've read so far. So I would say my recommendation, 5 grams a day every day until the day you die. If you have a really shit night's sleep, or, you know, as a time of, like, for example, Ryan Tuckwood, one of my clients, he ran the boot camp last weekend. And I'm sure you don't mind me sharing, he had 2 hours to 3 hours sleep the night before because he had some things happen and flights got delayed and et cetera. Was definitely not the optimal preparation. So yeah, I bought a bunch of supplements for him and stuff based off his DNA test. These are the things that are going to be good for your cognitive function out the back of the room. And one of the other things was, let's mega dose on creatine. It's not really the long-term strategy of like moving the needle forward, but it's kind of like a band-aid of like, all right, well,
in the short term,
yeah, we can't buy sleep in a pill just yet. Maybe with AI, who knows?
Maybe
it'd be an expensive pill. But right now we can't buy sleep in a pill, and we know that you need to be on stage for the next 10 hours and you got 2 hours sleep, and you're going to have 30 to 40% reduction in your cognitive function and memory recall, which is not great when you're pretending for 8 hours. So it's not going to be perfect, but let's smash 20 grams of creatine. So, you know, we lined it up on the tape. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, so that was a strategy and an example of, you know, how you could use it for cognitive function.
So how would you describe then what you stand for and then what you fight against?
Easy. I fight against mediocre, and I don't, that's the main thing I'd say is, if I can say it on a podcast, can I swear? I say fuck average. I think a lot of it comes from my own journey. I think I struggled a lot when I went through my own journey in the medical system. I feel like I wasn't really helped to the full potential. I don't have any bad blood against it. It was just like, I know the experience I went through and the experience a lot of people go through, that I, you know, hear the stories of it. So for me, it's just like lifting the level of healthcare and actually having that proactive approach where we don't just, so people don't have to go through what I went through, which is, you know, was pretty painful and pretty shit, to be honest. I feel like I lost a lot of, I mean, I'm young, but I feel like I lost, you know, a good year of life there in terms of like the quality of life of being sick and being down versus, you know, what I could have achieved and where I could have been if I had someone, you know, like myself at the time help me and, you know, take me through that journey. So I think for me, everything I do now is based off, I want to be the person that I needed, you know, a decade ago. So I think I said to you selfishly, it's like at different phases of my life, I've been fat, injured, depressed, sick. So now I created a program that helps you get healthy, you know, in shape, have high energy, get jacked. Yeah. So it's like, you know, that's basically what I wanted to create. I want to create a nice all-in-one integrated program where people can feel heard is the biggest thing. Because I think something I stand against in the medical industry is like, again, no shade to doctors. You got 8 minutes, you do the best you can, but you know, no one really listens to you. No one really hears you. A lot of it's like, for whatever reason, if it's the 8-minute consult, you don't have time, or maybe some people just don't really have the time of day and care. People aren't really being heard and being listened to. And that's the biggest thing. I think you don't treat someone's diagnosis, you treat the person. You can have two people that both have the same disease. Hashimoto's, for example, I've treated lots of people with that. It's like they've had completely different treatment plans, because what we said earlier is like, well, your habits, routines, behaviors, environment, genetics are going to be the things that drive you to get to that spot. You both ended up here and you both have disease, but you have completely different stories of like what drove that. If you don't listen to someone, obviously you need the right data, but if you don't actually listen to someone, what's happening in their life, then how are you meant to know how you're meant to fix it? So that's a big thing, like listening to people over profits, which kind of is something they always say is like, I think with a lot of these programs coming out now with like the advances in AI and longevity and data, it's great. But there's also a lot of like cookie cutter, you know, bullshit out there where people are just obviously lost. I think a lot of health practitioners can sometimes lose sight when they see the money involved. So for me, it's always something I'll stand by is people over profits. I'd rather help less people and help them at a better level than just, you know, help the masses. And yeah, it's probably the main things. People over profits, you know, peak performance, fuck average. And yeah, it's probably the main things that come to mind.
Powerful, mate.
I'm sure there's a million others, but they're the front ones.
Powerful, mate. You shared so many incredible insights and strategies that no doubt there's going to be a lot of people with some additional questions. So your links will be in the bio and show notes. But if you have any questions and you're watching this, then feel free to drop them in the comments and we'll circle back to them.
Last one I'd say actually came to mind because I was just thinking then, like, this is literally an example of high functioning ADHD in a podcast. But, you know, something I was always told is, you know, you always label with things. I'm really anti-label. I really fucking hate labels. It pisses me off because it's like people then identify with the label, and it's like big one here is like, ADHD. How many people do you know in your circle that have ADHD?
Oh, probably most.
How many of them actually have ADHD?
I don't know.
I saw your post the other day, which I'll probably repeat on Facebook, about before 2000, how many certain people did you know?
Yeah.
Same sort of thing. Think about how many people before 2000 did you know that had ADHD?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. What happened now? Every single person. I mean, it's a multifactorial rabbit hole for another podcast, but I think, I don't like the labels. And I think, a lot of people, like, that's something I'm really against, is like finding the root cause, treating people like humans, and being curious, and not just accepting diagnosis. I'm really anti-diagnostic, which sounds weird as a practitioner, like but that's a problem in uni.
I think that could be a strength though.
Yeah, I think so. Because in uni, it's just like, I actually got in trouble lots at uni. I almost failed my 5th year of uni when I was in clinic because I got told off for trying to solve and figure out what the problem was. And I remember the clinician at the time was like, you just need to give me the diagnosis. You just need to give me the diagnosis. And me being a stubborn 22-year-old was like, well, it fucking doesn't matter. Like, why does it matter if it's a glute tendinopathy or if it's a piriformis tendinopathy? Like, end of the day, the thing is that drove it is like, they're not moving very well. They got poor, hip mobility. They got poor lateral hip stability.
You're asking different questions.
Yeah. So I was like, wouldn't it make more sense if we looked at like the 5 contributing factors of why this person has lateral hip pain, rather than getting stuck in the weeds as if it's this tendon or that tendon? Because at the end of the day, it's not going to affect the rehab. And I almost failed. But I think testament, like I've not really changed my stubbornness on that, because I believe, what I'm more interested in is the person and the root causes and the contributing factors rather than the diagnosis, because the diagnosis tells you fuck all. You can have 10 people with a disc bulge for 10 different reasons. One lifts shit, one has poor programming, one has bad recovery, one has bad technique. It's like, you don't treat the disc bulge, you treat the person and the factors that cause the disc bulge. So that's probably my biggest,
seems to be your philosophy,
pet peeve philosophy, what I stand for, whatever, however you want to put it is, but I also think it's what makes me good at what I do, because I'm like a detective.
I love that.
I think
you become the detective.
I'm really annoying, I think I turned what I was annoying. My parents used to tell me I was really annoying as a kid, because I was always that person. I was like, why? But I think, when it comes to solving complex problems of people who might have been through the medical system for years and seen multiple practitioners and haven't had answers, you need someone who's like really curious and like just won't take it for an answer. Because until you get curious and go through those layers, like I said, it's like an onion. You just keep going. There's just so much to the body. And you need to do that. Otherwise, the superficial diagnosis and symptom is never the problem. So
interesting.
Ask better questions.
Ask better questions. That's very well put. Well, thank you for coming on the Freedom Formula podcast. It was an absolute pleasure.
Thanks, mate. Appreciate it.